Okay, stream has started. I hope everybody's doing well. Let me see. Okay, on the YouTube live dashboard, it says that it started. I need to figure out a better way to start these things other than just me trying to troubleshoot and to verify whether I've started this or not. That's fine. Maybe this is just a thing that I do. Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, October 15th. Wow, almost halfway there throughout this month. 11:19 a.m. here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. The weather is, I don't know. I will get that up. I will have that ready for us the next time I do a little live stream. 14 degrees or so. And I got myself a fancy little mic arm that you might not be able to see it on camera, but I have a little mic here now. So I've had this mic for a long time, from doing voiceovers and various other things, but I never really found a good way to be able to use it in sort of a live stream, live coding kind of scenario, just because it gets in the way. However, thanks to Amazon, I bought a relatively affordable arm that I was able to mount the mic on, and now I can talk. And my voice should sound a lot better compared to what I had before. Previously, I had a lavalier mic that I connected directly to my computer. Works very well, especially in more co-working kind of traveling on the road kind of experiences. But at home, I think using an actual dedicated mic like this is better. Makes my voice sound like chocolate. I hope. Okay, switching over to my desktop. Cool. So I think we're live and everything's going okay. So YouTube says my stream health is just okay. Viewers may be experiencing minor issues. Oh no, it's green now. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. So right now we're on my screen. And, oh, yes, I should probably fire things up. That would help. npm run, what is it, store? No. Design system dev, I believe. So that fires up the storybook. Cool. Alrighty. So while that is firing up, just going to give some context. So on Friday, I did a live stream session where I built out a card component. Now things aren't working because I've done some refactoring. Why does this not? Background shade is not defined. Well, as I tried to fix my code that I refactored just before this call, on Friday I built a card component that has several little subcomponents that you're able to compose together to build out a card interface for various scenarios. So now I'm going to try to figure out why it is I can't do the thing I need to do. Background shade is not defined. Okay, fine. Background. Oh, right. Background shady. So I did a little refactor. All right, cool. Here's a card component. It was completely built in Storybook. It was very, very handy. Right. So we're able to see it has a header, has a footer, has a body, and I added Storybook knobs, allowing me to be able to tinker with it. Yay, like so. And I can see if that works. Shady is I don't know what the right word is. the word. Someone on the live stream, quality is solid. Thanks, David. Suggested as the name to make the background slightly gray. I don't know if you can see that, but the background is slightly gray here. So that's known as shady now. And we're able to adjust the size and also change the variance. So now we can have borderless and also raised. Cool. So we had different variation styles for the card, and there was a little bit of feedback from Riyadh. Thank you so much, by the way, regarding the component that I built, and they were very, very good bits of feedback. So the first one is currently they do in the WordPress components ecosystem. They do have a panel and also a panel body, which kind of has the same kind of UI as what the card has. It has a header and a body. And he was wondering if we should replace it with the card component, or how can we reconcile both? The interesting thing is Bootstrap did kind of a very similar thing. In Bootstrap 3, there 3 or 2, one of those, there existed a panel component, and I think, and they used that to construct kind of the mobile. Very, very similar. Header, body, footer, and they had a panel component. But as of Bootstrap 4, they basically created a smaller component, card, that you're able to use to construct a bunch of other things, including panels. So here we can see that Bootstrap 3, they replaced the cards, they replaced their panels and wells and thumbnails with card because it was able to facilitate that use case. However, in addition to this little feedback, Aaron Filetto commented in that the panel experience, something like what WordPress is using right now here, the functionality is slightly different than what we need the card to be, because the card should just be some bit of UI that's relatively agnostic as far as behavior goes. Panel is a little bit more prescriptive. It has opinions. Panels are opinionated. It needs a title, it's collapsible, it goes up and down, it does things. So in that perspective, I think the thing that we can do is, let's pretend right now we have the new card. Yay! New, not now. We also have the panel and also panel body, I believe. Panel body and a bunch of panel other things. So let's just say panel. So I think what needs to happen is panel should definitely stay, should stay. And it has various APIs related to its components. So it has APIs. What are they? Title and header and all this kind of stuff. So this stays the same in the library, and I believe we have to. We have to keep it that way for backwards compatibility and support reasons. But underneath the hood, I think panel, when it's trying to render, which I guess would be something like export function panel is a component that has props, and then it does things with props. But I think what the panel can do is, forgive my poor syntax right now, is the panel can render the card internally. And then the panel, what is it? Panel header. Right. So if it takes a header prop, const header from props. It's funny, Sublime used to be my favorite code editor, and right now all I use it for is to write down simple notes and to write down garbage code, like what I'm doing right now. And it's fine. So card header would render the header, and so on and so on. So yeah, we would use the card as the UI foundation to compose panel. The other interesting thing is, well, maybe the UI that we need for panel is a little bit different compared to what's supported inside of card. How do we override those styles? So at the moment, the card component that I introduced on Friday is using CSS and JS, specifically styled components, to do its thing. Mentioned it a little bit on Friday. I can go in depth about CSS and JS. It's TLDR. It's a wonderful thing. It has cross-platform support. So this one is supported on native. React Native supported for rendering on mobile for Android and iOS. You have to code it a little bit differently, but it's there. So having one component that you can use on multiple platforms is very handy. That, I think, it's one of the biggest features. Not the only feature, but one of the biggest. So because we're using styled components, what you can do is you can actually do something like this. Const panel card is styled, and then I'm just modifying the styles of this card to do something else. Background, I don't know, red. So now with my panel card, I can replace this. So now my panel is, the card is now red because I've made it red with this little component here. The concept of this is very similar to traditional CSS or standard CSS. So in standard CSS, you would have something like this. I'm going to capitalize it. I'm used to, this is another thing I can talk about. My little tangents. David, you have to go watch more of these. So the reason why I do it on YouTube is because YouTube, thankfully, automatically saves every single one of these live streams after the fact. So you can catch up on these afterwards, after the recording is done. And in terms of scheduling, I don't have one yet, but I think depending on whether people find these streams useful, which I think you are, um, yeah, I think I should have some sort of schedule where I just code something or touch upon something, React related, design related, CSS front end, whatever related. I have a live stream I want to do talking about animations. But yeah, I should have something scheduled. If people feel like this is useful, and I'll just do them twice a week or once a week or whatever that case may be. Maybe once a week scheduled plus some random ones that I just feel like, I need to talk about this, share this with the world. Um, all right, tangent time. So there, I found that when I was jumping between React rendered code and CSS, this is like a more traditional kind of setup where you have your CSS. I'm going to jump back to my camera because I think I'm just talking now. No, I'll stick with my screen. So traditionally, you would have, your CSS files living somewhere else, like card.css, and then you have a card.js, and so on. So you have this, and then maybe in your React somewhere you have something like this. And I found that the naming conventions for traditional CSS, which uses kebab case, so nothing is really uppercase, depending on the kind of thing you do. You might do camel casing if you're doing Sass, and you had variables like card background, something like that, or some folks do card background like this, very hardcore, very traditional, very standard kebab casing stuff. So yeah, usually it's something that looks like this, lowercase. But when you jump into the world of React and components, or just JavaScript in general, where you have the idea of classes, well, classes are almost always uppercase, and components are uppercase. So it would be export default const, not export default function card does a thing. So yeah, when you're working inside of React, you always start with an uppercase thing. That's just how it is. So if you had buttons, button, maybe the button has an icon, and so on. Always working with something that looks like this. And I found that jumping between the two, there of course is a lot of context switching, which is not free. Context switching costs you. And if you're more proficient or you're more used to it, then it doesn't really cost you much. But for a lot of people, it's quite costly. And one very tiny trick that I found that helps me with this context switching is, well, conceptually, this card and this card is the exact same thing. Conceptually, it's a box with a shadow on it. But because of how it's written, there is this tiny little micro something that you have to switch, where it's like, oh yeah, card, capital, React, whatever. So I found just by capitalizing this like this, it's made the switch, or it's made that connection a lot stronger, at least from me. And that's what I found in talking to other front-end devs as well. So having something like this makes the connection a lot stronger, especially if you start having nested kind of components like this, card body, or if you had a card header, title, I don't know what you may have. But when you start doing something like this, right, and when you start composing bits of your components, like maybe you have div, and now you have a card, and now you have a card header, and then inside of your card header, you have a card header title. You start doing something like this. This code starts looking an awful lot like this, and that just makes that connection stronger. So yeah, that's my little tangent about just using or naming your classes almost the exact same way as you would your React components. Very tiny thing, but makes context switching a lot easier and it bridges that gap, at least for me. So now, okay, so this was the tangent on standard CSS and bridging gaps between CSS and React.js. So now, jumping back to styled components, we have, since we're using that, we can now modify a card like this, and now we can just use a brand new component that is created for us, presentational component, of course, to be rendered here. So yes, and that hopefully, well, that's my thoughts on how we can reconcile both card and panel. Panel exists, stays the same. It's just internally, the UI will be constructed with card. And now here's a cool thing. Because at the moment, panel has, panel, no, that's not where I need to go. Oh my goodness, so many files. Panel, somewhere, components, component, panel, index. Yes. All right. It is here. Where did the styles come from? I haven't done this beforehand, by the way. I'm exploring this for the very first time. Where did the styles come from? Oh, right here. Cool. All right. So because panel has a bunch of these styles already, if you start composing, because it has a certain look, right, with padding, borders, and backgrounds, and so on. So if you start composing them with cards, like so, then at some point you can just delete all of the CSS and pretend that it never happened. That's a cool thing about the CSS and JS stuff. As you start replacing the components internally, you can then just delete your old SCSS code, which will reduce the size of your overall CSS bundle, which is great. And it also allows for more out-of-the-box usage for the components that you construct, which is very, very cool. So yeah, extra props automatically get added to all the components, yes. So that, I believe, is touching upon something like this, where I'm spreading additional props like so when you're plucking it off of here. I am still in the belief. So the idea for something like this, prop spreading or whatever it is you want to call it, the idea is const custom thing. It's a good name. Return, it does a div, and it does rest props. Const hello is one of the props. I don't know why, it just is. So the idea is, if you create a component like this, at least for me, from a lower level library perspective, not like an application level component like you would get inside of Gutenberg, lower level, like WordPress components, Shopify Polaris, Carbon from IBM, any one of those, I should be able to use this more or less like I would a traditional HTML element. So that means that if I wanted to stick aria label equals hello on it, I can. But if you don't do this, if you only just pluck out the things you need, which is probably a good thing from an application perspective, because you want to safeguard just passing down random props. And let's pretend you don't have the security blanket that is TypeScript or Flow. That's probably a good thing. But if I'm using a lower level component, I should be able to define ARIA things, roles, data attributes, whatever it is that's required. But if you don't do this, then this doesn't get to happen. However, there is a downside. When you start doing this rest prop stuff, then you can start passing in garbage. Garbage is hello. And then we is we. So you can start doing something like this, and it's perfectly valid from a rendering, like how components are invoked perspective. However, if you check with the console logs, you'll see that React will complain. Just because this is illegal, you shouldn't be doing this. So what happens inside of libraries like Emotion and styled components is deep inside, they actually have something that does some sort of filtering nonsense stuff. Let me just give it a shot. Let's see what I'm talking about. So if I go to block, right? Yes. I know I'm a bad person. It's complaining at me. So, alrighty. Hopefully you can see all this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. That does nothing. All right. I'm gonna go into here, block directory card, and I am going to pass in hot garbage, and hopefully hot garbage is filtered out. I'm gonna pass it into the card body. There we go. If it doesn't, then that sucks. Yes, so you can see this is my card body. Card. I love this magnifying glass thing. So where is it? Components card body. These are the class names. This is medium, but there's no hot garbage here. Just dumb prop, but it works well. So we don't see hot garbage here. The reason why hot garbage is not there is because internally inside of styled components, what they do is once somewhere internally in styled components, so they have some sort of styled interface, right? Where you're able to pass in props in this kind of manner. Const box is style div, and you pass in stuff, and it knows how to do things. So when it's doing that thing, and then it's evaluating the props. I don't know if this is what they call it. I'm just making up functions and words, but this is kind of what they do. They pass the props through some sort of function that filters out things that they deem unsafe for traditional React rendering things, which is good because now you have your styled components protected from hot garbage like this, and you're able to more or less safely do this rest prop spreading when you're constructing your lower level components, which is good. This is more fine-grained stuff. The implementation detail, or the tiny kind of detail that I found in the past, is at least for Motion 9, this kind of filtering mechanism was a lot better compared to Motion 10. Styled components, I'm not sure, but let's give it a shot. Because I know that they allow certain words to go through because they use a regex engine underneath to filter these things out. So on hot garbage, does that work? I may be wrong. They may have made it better, or I might have seen it during some sort of beta. Yeah. So they're here we go. So on hot garbage. So on hot, yeah. Hey Tammy, lovely to see you here again. I am having very diluted, watered down instant coffee. And the reason why I'm committing such blasphemy is because sometimes I just need something hot and caffeinated. It doesn't need to be cream of the cream, coffee beans, or anything like that. And that is what I have right now. So on hot garbage going through, the reason why it's going through is because they're using some sort of regex matcher for like an on something. That makes sense because in React you have an on mouse enter, on mouse leave, on click, and so on like that. So they have something to like regex match for all this stuff, which allows on hot garbage to go through. So that is a downside. In the past, what I've done is in this mechanism, I actually wrote my own that forked the thing from Motion 9, customized it a little bit to make it a little bit stronger, and that's how I kind of handled something like this. Overall, for most cases, I think this should be fine. You have some protection from styled components and when you're doing the rest prop spreading, but if you're doing something, what the heck? Whoa! I just deleted everything. No. I need all this back. Hey, no. Sorry. We're going back in time. Yeah. So if you're doing something more standard like this, rest props there, and you're doing this, then you get zero protection. I mean, it won't break your app. You won't have super security concerns. It's just it'll yell at you. It's not valid. So you need to figure out some sort of way to do this safely. There are multiple ways, but something to consider. But TLDR, using style components, should help us there. And the last one, naming strategy, card.something. This was interesting. So on Friday, what I suggested was, since we have card and we have a lot of little components like body, divider, and so on that you can see on the left-hand side right here, because these are kind of little components associated with card, then they can be tacked on like static, what are they called? Static properties. Card, divider, that's divider, body. So that's one style of doing something like this. Some design system component libraries leverage this technique. Shopify Polaris is one of them. And others just prefer to export literally everything as little bits, and then you just compose them accordingly to your needs. So if I need something that was like, I need a card body, a card header, and a card footer, and also a divider, 5 things, then you'll need to do something like this. Card body, card header, card footer, card divider, from WordPress components, which isn't the end of the world. It's just a little bit more verbose upfront. But the benefits of this, which is what Riyadh talked about, is the ability to do code splitting. And also tree shaking, if that is something that we need. So I agree with that. I agree with that. So in the refactor I'm going to be doing today, right now I'm just aimlessly doing this as I'm talking. So in the refactor that I'm going to be doing today is to provide this kind of thing, which isn't too hard. I just need to change import-export paths, and we will have that functionality, which mirrors the kind of experience that we have now, which is good. Keeps things consistent and allows for the code splitting stuff that we had talked about. So let us do that. Touched upon all these things. Let's go. So the interesting thing I have, I think let's see, panel. How did they do panel? They had all these little bits associated with panel and what? So how does the panel get broadcasted to the world? How do we know what comes from panel? Panel header. Oh, okay. So they did something like this. So we did something like this in WordPress components, where you would, from this file, say all the little bits that you've exported. That works. Maybe this is something I should be doing. I should do this as well, I guess. So my thinking is you can actually do this in a different way. What you can do is you can do something like this. Export everything from /card. So this is the main components .index.js, and then this is your components card.index.js. So inside here you would export default as card body from body. So you would basically write all this stuff at the card level, and the entry point, the index, you would just export everything from there. That's one way to do it. That's one way to manage your funnel in a way. So I will just stick with whatever's here, just because this is the kind of convention they have. But that's something to think about. So let's do that. So instead of calling it body, I have to call it card body now. I guess that's fine. Body divider, card. Alrighty. Things are going to explode, and the browser is going to get very mad at me. I believe. In a bit. Oh, just you wait. Just you wait for the browser to yell at me. Card. Save. Alright, here's the most important one. Going to get rid of all these subcomponents now. I don't need this anymore. Save. And now the browser is going to yell at me. Yes, it does. Green tea with lemon. That sounds lovely. That's what Tammy's having right now, as I'm having my hot brown caffeine drink. not even coffee. It is coffee. It's just so disgraceful that probably shouldn't be calling it coffee. Mm. Um, hot brown caffeine. Let's see. Now I got to do the import exporty bits. That's fine with me. Um, card body exports it from card body. Copy, paste, do things. Footer, divider, media. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 things, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, cool. Dang, this is. I'm thinking another thing. Card footer, card divider, card media. And alphabetize this. Great. So now I have my exports done, which is good. The thing I said dang about, I'm just noticing this, is it would be, this is something to do in the future, not necessarily now. It would be cool to provide this context as an exportable thing as well. Like you should be able to pluck little bits from here, from the card context. This may be useful for larger, more complex components, like say a autocomplete dropdown or date component, something where it's a little bit more involved with interactions and state and all that kind of stuff. So the reason why you'd want to do that is to just have finer grained control. So if you're able to leverage the context, you're able to therefore build your own little component that you can inject inside. And that's the building of your own. I'm going to illustrate this now. So a complex thing is powered by a context. So my custom thing, no, custom thing, yeah. So if I created I'm just going to call this something. If I'm creating something called green tea with lemon, shout out to you, Tammy. So if I'm creating something called green tea with lemon and I want to add this to my custom thing, or complex thing, then if this exports the context, exports use complex context, then my green tea with lemon is able to tap into that in a very kind of simple, non crazy way. Because back in the day, back in the heyday, before React 16 and hooks, this kind of relationship of plucking context and stuff was really messy. So I was able to do this in a clean way. This is something I'm creating externally. And because this has been exported and now I can use it here, in theory, if your complex thing component supports it, you're able to use green tea with lemon inside of the complex thing relatively easily. It should just be a plop in and go. And they know how to connect to each other, they know how to talk to each other because of the context. So yeah, that's my whole thing of just like, how do I export context from one of these things? At the moment, it doesn't look like there's a way to do that. Unless I do something like this, use context, and attack that as a static on the card. Something like that. But right now, not a problem. Just talking out loud and one of the things that have to consider when doing this stuff. All right, cool. Anyway, we've done the exports now. Now I gotta, oh my goodness, now I gotta refactor all my stories to do the thing I need to do. That's fine. That is fine. Card body from body. Card divider from divider. Oh boy. Card header. This is so much fun watching me type and delete and change things. No, I feel like this is a little bit boring. I apologize. And yes, I do see the equal sign there. My goodness, my fingers today. Body divider header. All right, cool. All right. Now I just need to replace all instances of this with this header media. Yeah, let's do media. Card media. These are my stories, by the way. These are storybook stories, which I used heavily in developing the card component on Friday. Gonna be footer. That was one thing I'm missing. Card footer. Footer? Alright. Card footer. Alrighty. Think I'm done? Divider. Did I use that anywhere? I have not. I will in the future. But now the browser should not be as angry with me because I've done. Yes, it's still angry with me. Why are you still angry with me? Story FN, there is some sort of something that it's not liking. It's not liking that I haven't exported something and it's mad. I don't know. To be honest, I have no idea why it's still mad at me. Let me just get rid of all this stuff. Okay, are you still mad at me, storybook? No, it's fine now. Cool. What if I just add in this divider? Oh, right, it's mad at me because I did have a divider. I just didn't use it. Okay, got it. Yeah. This is how I debug things. I just um, comment things out and see if it explodes or not. And if it doesn't, then oh, I'm onto something here. Let me just change it back. I know people use fancy things like breakpoint and maybe so on. I do that if I absolutely have to. But I like keeping it simple. Console logging, commenting things out. That's how I do. That's how I roll. Alrighty, now it should not be angry at me. It's no longer angry at me. Great. This is still angry at me. Why? Oh, that makes sense because I didn't get rid of that. Alright, cool. Now it's not angry at me. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. No more angry. I actually don't need a divider there. Yes, I do. Oh, now I gotta get rid of hard garbage because I just added it in there. Card body, card divider. Okay. Wonderful. We are at where we were in the very beginning. We're done refactoring now to change the structure and things to be where we need it to be. I believe. I need to refactor my stories because right now it has some nonsense, a little bit of nonsense in there, like this corgi video and so on. But we're going to work on tests. Excuse me, I had to cough. So the test coverage within React components, WordPress components, from what I can see is quite sparse. We have some. So this is me taking a look at the tests as someone who I'm a newbie, just coming into the project. And I'm just like, hey, this is literally my situation. Hey, I want to contribute something here. Tests are important. Tests are cool. We want to write unit tests for our components, which is great. How do we do it? So I see this snapshots folder, which is used for snapshot testing. We have a little bit of tests here, but as I poke through a lot of the components, there's a test. Oh, there's a test here. Basic render tests, which is good. Prop forwarding. Panel. We have some panel tests, which is good. Body. What does it do? Basic rendering. Should render things. All right. Mounting. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we have some tests. Not everywhere. Some places. Autocomplete is no test there. Basic controls, no test there. All right, we'll have some tests. Oh boy. So here's the thing. As of sometime last year and also this year, there's been a bit of a movement away from Enzyme to think about and to write tests in a different way. So here's what I'm talking about. Enzyme is a thing created by Airbnb. Right now it's in version 3. I believe the last time I really seriously took a look at it. And Enzyme was really good because it provided a really nice API layer to be able to very quickly test your React components inside of Jest. We're going a little deep inside of testing libraries now, and I'll keep it short, I promise. So where are your docs, Enzyme? Airbnb, cool. Yes, so you're able to do something like this relatively quickly. I'm able to render a thing, and I'm able to see if it exists. You're able to write lots of little units like this for your components or for your React components and so on, which is wonderful. The downside is it doesn't really work. This really starts breaking apart when you're trying to do things that are a little bit more complex. What I mean by that is if you're using a lot of HOCs, higher order components, or wrappers, or providers, then shallow doesn't really work correctly. I can give you demonstrations as to why. And also, you have to fake and stub a lot of behavior inside of Enzyme. So now, if your component is relatively complex, you might be faking like 80% plus of its rendering. And at that point, you're not really testing much. Um, and when you get to that level, then you're just like fighting with Enzyme and all this stuff. It gets to be very, very difficult to write your tests, even though jest mocking and mock implementations and dependency mocking is a thing. It gets very tough. So there's been a recent movement to kind of be like, hey, what if we just like test the thing as if it rendered in a browser? Which is more like the how you would do jQuery testing with QUnit and so on. So Cypress has become a big thing. Cypress is wonderful. The other one that harkens more towards the JS DOM. Oh, I'm going to do not disturb. Hey, Lynn. So another thing that harkens more towards the JS DOM Jest-powered node environment is something created by Kenzie Dots, testing library. Yes, and this is starting to gain popularity just because it. Where is the React testing library? React testing library. Even wrote a course about it. Yeah, so the idea is to be able to test how the thing behaves, what you expect it to look like, function like from a user perspective. You're not testing little bits of state, or as he likes to say, you're not testing implementation details of your component, whether the internal states of something increments by one or not. You're not testing that. You're testing the results of that. By clicking on this button, does the text change from 0 to 1? Something like that. And this created lots of wrappers and things to make that kind of testing experience a lot more efficient. So I'm very much in line with how this kind of testing works, just because it's a lot. You don't have to babysit your tests, really. You don't have to do a lot of things to scaffold up your tests, mock things to do whatever. You just write things and just write your tests and it's fine. So now jumping into the more enzyme world, which is something that I've been kind of apart from for a while. Now I'm jumping back in. Just one last thing. So touching upon the let me just test how it renders situation, I actually wrote a testing library here that basically combines the two, the Cypress experience with React testing library. So the idea is something like this. You can render a modal. This is something like what you would do in Enzyme. You would render it. The whole thing, the actual modal would build inside of the JS DOM environment. You find the button, you click it, and then you just check to see if it's open. And then you click the close button, and now it's closed. Anyway, this is a thing I wrote, and I've been testing with this in my previous company. It's been very, very successful. And I miss it, but that's fine. We'll jump back to Enzyme World. Enzyme World. How do we do things in Enzyme World? Okay. Oh boy. So right now, we are trying to render a card component, which is what we're plucking from here. standard so far. Nothing too crazy. I have to inject this little disable next line, no console, because this environment does not like console logs. And console log just happens to be the way I test things. Especially in Enzyme, especially inside of Jest. Oh my goodness, I console log things there all the time. I mean, that's the only way I can see what the heck is going on. Otherwise, you're stuck. I guess unless you use breakpoints or something, but then that's fancy stuff. Here's the thing. So now if I console log this, it's also doing stuff with console logging. It mocks something. I'm not sure. There's something funky going on here with console that I am not sure what's going on. But it's fine. Anyways, this is the structure that Enzyme is rendering via the shallow. And if I were to do something like this, then this would fail. I'm going to rename this something. Should have components card class name. And this is important. So we need to make sure the class name stays consistent and is exposed. That way people can write standard CSS to override things. So it should have this. And in my storybook, it does. Default. Here, components card. What's the problem? I literally just rendered the card with a body, and in my HTML I see a card with the body, but for some reason, Enzyme, you don't see a card in the body. You're seeing some nonsense stuff here with a provider and so on. Oh, right. Of course, it's because you're shallow rendering. This is usually the trap we have. Oh, right. Because it's shallow rendering, it's not building out all the components to its full capacity. Okay, here's what we do. We'll just change it to, we'll just mount the thing, because mount is usually the thing where it's like, let's evaluate the components at a deeper level. But it's still failing. Why? Now we take a look at the structure. Oh my goodness, there's lots of things going on here. In the card, should have a class name of components card, but it doesn't. The reason why it doesn't is because the wrapper is this most parent component. That's what the wrapper is. And I'm trying to see if this wrapper has a class name of components card, which it doesn't. Somewhere down here, actually it does. The style div, which comes from style components, and style components does another thing. So we can see that in the context of Enzyme, it doesn't work because there's lots of wrappers that's happening inside of React. This is sort of a standard thing at the moment. Libraries and architecture and techniques still call for wrappers, higher order components or whatever. So here's where you get into the kind of mess of like, all right, what if I dive, and then you're going to start diving, and then you're going to start finding. So here's what I had to do. I had to, at some point, be like, all right, fine, render the card, and then find the card component with a specific class name, and then I guess make card length is to be 1, and that's one way you can validate its existence. Is you can check the length. You can be length to be truthy, which is one way of doing it. So you can check to make sure it's valid, because if you can't find it, therefore it's 0. But this is very cumbersome, I think. It's still the contract is still there. Like this would fail if you happen to change this class name. But man, it just feels wrong. Like I'm not able to actually test this thing. I have to kind of like work around the system just because I happen to be using wrappers. So this is a long thing describing like why the current implementation of Enzyme is something that I'm not a fan of, but then also why some of these tests might look the way that it might look, and also why these tests may be brittle. That's just we're working around the current system. That is JS DOM, that is Node, and that is Enzyme. Anyway, so we're testing to make sure. Oh, Lynn's joined us. Hey, hope you're doing well. So we're testing to make sure that it has a class name. Great, cool. And here's a really silly thing. Every single time I want to like check for the component or check for something, I have to do this little find after my initial wrapper just because I'm using a higher component. And it just gets very cumbersome and verbose when you're running at your tests. A workaround some people might have, instead of like, because you might be doing all these finds in random places. Let's pretend you have like 50, no, not 50, that's excessive. Let's pretend you have like 10 tests that kind of do this. And you notice like, well, every single time I had to render a wrapper, and in the wrapper I had to find a card. What they do is then they create a function called like render shallow render card, which is a wrapper for this, something like this. Current card. So now they have this, and now in their test they would do something like this. Const card equals shallow render card, which is fine, it cleans it up. But now if I'm taking a look at the test in isolation, I'm like, what the heck is shallow render card? Anyway, my whole long thing about why I'm not a fan of the current Enzyme implementation. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely adore the Enzyme. Has helped me tremendously. It's helped a lot of people tremendously. I'm not devaluing the impact that it's made. I'm just as a longtime user and fan of Enzyme. It's I wish it could be better. Which it may be. You might be able to change it, but it literally goes against its fundamental way of doing things, of shallow rendering, and also mounted rendering. It doesn't handle it the same from a fundamental level. So I don't know how to fix that other than using a different library. Anyway, we are rendering a card. Lots of little tangents as I talk about testing. I think I've talked way more than I've written something. I've written maybe like 50 words. Maybe 20 words. Okay, what do I need to do? I need to make sure that the card is able to render something inside. So should be able to render content. That's one thing. So I guess at this point I don't need to do this wrapper. I need to do div class name content. Hello. Content equals, I need to find it, so I need to find the class name of content. Something is not happy here. Why are you unhappy? Oh, it doesn't have a closing tag. That would explain things. So I expect content to exist. Oh man, is there one of these? I think there might be this one. No, I wish there was. Anyway, content length to be 1, and then content text to be hello. Great. So I'm testing to make sure that I can render content, and I can verify that this works because if I go here and I do something like this, nope. Then my test break. Or should. Yeah. Yeah, cool. So I'm able to render content. Great. I can start writing more tests. I just want to see if there is a established way to kind of break this apart. Basic rendering. Should render an empty div without any provider props. Type to be a div. Shallow. Ah, here we go. We're doing some drilling stuff here now. Find this shallow render children to have. Yeah. Things like this. Like, you shouldn't have to do this in a testing library. And then anyway, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, this thing actually doesn't really do much. What it does is that it absorbs the initial entry point props, be it at the moment, it's just size and variant, and it prepares it to render, um, and it prepares it for the props internally, body, header, footer, and so on. So that's the thing I need to test. It's not necessarily the card, it's more so the integration of how the card plays with all of its other little bits. So let's see, describe, I guess this is basic rendering. Describe basic, whoops, basic rendering. Did you use capital? No, then I will also not use capital. Hopefully that is correct. If not, it's fine. Alrighty, so this one does this. Cool. Nothing much has changed. So I can basically duplicate. So what I like to do when I'm writing these tests is I create some sort of foundation, like some sort of foundational bit, which is basically let's render the thing, let's render things inside, something like that. And then now, because it has all these little bits internally that kind of more or less do the same thing, I can do this now. Body, if I spell it right. Body, body. Great. And at the bottom of my VS Code, I have just running in watch mode. And I did a fuzzy search for the word card. So my tests are constantly running as I'm writing my stuff. So the experience between testing and seeing how if I break my test runner, is very seamless. So, all right, this is the card body. It also does basic rendering. Yes, it does. Card body from body, and now I just need to replace the word card with card body component card body. All right, here. Oh my goodness. Oh man, card body. This is the very meticulous kind of things you gotta do with tests. Anyway, it's fine. Oh, it's yelling at me. Card is not defined. Oh, that's because I didn't use it correctly. There we go. Cool. So a basic rendering for card body. Here's an interesting question. So these things are they almost do nothing of how basic these tests are. Should we even be writing them? I hate to give this answer, but it depends. If you're working on a application like Gutenberg or even the block editor bits or anything like that, things that aren't necessarily designed to be npm installed and consumed at a micro level to be used to build something else, then your test coverage doesn't necessarily need to be at the 100% level. This is something that Kensey Johnson went over. He had a blog post talking about it, about test coverage and where you should be focusing a lot of your tests on. So when you're building applications, you need to be focusing a lot on integration, how the pieces fit together. Are there explosions when you put a button inside of a card? When you put this card button thing inside of your view? When you render this view inside of your page? Things like that. You have to focus a lot on that. When you're building a library, however, yes, in my opinion, this thing better be 100% tested, because when I npm install and use this little fine-grained bit, I expect it to work. Because my application, my block, my something, the foundations of its UI is composed of these bits, and they very well better damn work. So to make sure you catch all of the little nitty-gritty bugs, that's where you need to write a lot of these unit tests, as painful and as annoying as they are to upkeep and also write, just because you need lots and lots and lots of them. in the previous design system component library that I worked on at Help Scout, I wrote, I think in that library alone, there were more than 3,500 tests. It was 100% tested. And that helped tremendously. I mean, once you have a foundation of like lots and lots of tests, it just becomes easier to just like copy and paste and add additional tests and so on. But it made sure having lots of tests like that, testing out little details of like it should have a class name of this. It should not break the class name of this. It should render things that React components typically should be able to do out of the box. By making sure that is tested, that means that if we do somehow manage to change some of that basic functionality, it doesn't then go break the application because of reasons. So, anywho, we had to write lots of these little units for component libraries because they're important. They are the foundations of how applications, plugins, and larger things are built. And you can think of them as like functions that you may npm install from a library, Lodash, or one of the many libraries that Cindersaurus has built. One of those, because when you're adding these little modules, Lodash, I really love Lodash, and I like using it as an example because it has all these little fundamental things: uppercase, kebab case, things for strings, mapping, all these fundamental things that you would use to build your Express server or your application. Those things better work. So you can think of your components that you're building inside of your component library as rudimentary and as fundamental as those functions, because they are. They just happen to be written with React, and they just happen to render HTML things. But they are very, very core and fundamental as something like that. Anyway, now we have things that render the body. Now we're going to render the header. Now, because I've written the body, I can just hang on, alphabetical. Yes, ABC. Upper lowercase makes a difference. Card header from header card header. Yay! Look at me blaze through my tests. Yay! I've written three test thingies. Divider actually doesn't do much, but header and footer kind of do the same thing. So I can copy and paste in here. Card body, card footer, not spotter, footer, card footer. All right, it's doing stuff. Last one is, no, not last one, divider. Divider is slightly different because the divider doesn't render anything in the body. You can't pass the content. So that one will be the first one that's slightly different. Our divider. And it's going to complain because this does not work. Yeah, great, my test works. Should not render child content. Great. And another thing I've added to the divider is it needs to have a role of separator. Should have role of separator. Yeah, this is the annoying thing. I gotta find the divider. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. So how the heck do I do this? Oh man, is this something I expect? Card divider prop role to be separator. I think I've spelled this three different ways, and 3 different times. Okay. How did I spell it? Separator. Separator. Oh my goodness. Don't tell me it's doing a silly thing. Ah, fighting with enzyme now. That's why I'm kind of dying inside a bit. ESLint disable next line. No console. We'll see. We'll see what the heck is going on. Wrapper debug. Card divider debug. Why is it not rendering a roll? There it is. Hey man, there it is. Props. What are your props? You don't have props because I didn't give you props. So I hit the mic, I apologize. Why? I see it. I see it right here. I see it's yelling at me saying a separator. Right? Okay. So why are you mad? I see it logging it. Oh, I apologize. I'm doing a different thing. Okay. Content length to be 0, but content length is 1. Why is that? Oh, good thing I wrote my test, because I'm not allowed to render children, so I need to pluck children out. Go me! I'm just kidding, that was awful. Alright. Ugh, that was embarrassing, but that's fine. Live coding. This is what happens. You put yourself out there, you get embarrassed. Children was never assigned, but never used. Man, how do I do this in a way that'll make ESLint happy? This just feels gross. Children, null. But maybe that's what I gotta do. It's fine. Also, my fans are going crazy. I think it's just because a combination of ESLint, VS Code, and Jest. Let's see, and also live streaming. Let's see where we're at. Memory used 25 gigs and almost 1 gig in swap. Cool. That's a lot of RAM, by the way. And the CPU is going nuts, and my fans are going nuts, and my computer's hot. That's fun. You know what's hot, or rather no longer hot? My coffee drink thing. Alrighty. So we have basic test for the divider. The role is separator. It's interesting for a divider. Thing about a divider. You would think that it might be an HR, or rather a horizontal rule component, one of these. But in actuality, I just rendered it as a div, just because divs are usually safe from external CSS external CSS things. CSS resets or existing CSS usually target things like HRs or UL or LI, things like that. So when you're adding components or things with existing styles into other environments that might have hostile things, this might happen. They might override your stuff, and now you're just like, oh, why does my thing look all terrible? That's why. So I've just erred on the side of a little bit side of caution, rendered it as it did for now. But in terms of scoping or styles, or scoping your styles to make sure the ones coming from styled components is a little bit stronger, that's another thing we got to take care of. That has more to do with the bundling and compiling of things. Not concerned for now. Anywho, so we now have our body. We now have a divider. We now have a header. We have a footer. We can now do a little bit of integration. Because sometimes, I don't know, you might want to render a divider inside of a body. Would you? Let's see what Bootstrap says. They don't have a divider. Maybe, I mean, you should totally be able to support this use case. I mean, but it's fine. I think we're going to do our integration testing at the card level. All right, cool. This is the hard part now, kinda. Context. Let's see if this works. Or rather, we have something else. This is a little bit more specific to, yeah, where do I do the integration testing? I think here. I think here we can always move it. Body, describe card. Alrighty, describe basic, describe body, card body. Alright, so it's being into card bodies being added inside of a card. So we should be able to render card body. Card body. And I think with Enzyme I'm able to do this, which I don't really like, but that's something that you can do. Card body. Okay. Card body length, card body hello, hello, yes. Should be able to be fine. It's fine. It's not fine. Why is the text this? Oh, it's because it's shallow mounted in that. Mount. When in doubt, change it to mount. Okay, it's fine now. Excuse me. Yeah. So I remember there was a time where I was just because I was using shallow so frequently that I just saw these numbers like 2 milliseconds so fast, and then I saw this mount which is like way more than 2 milliseconds. Like oh no, something with mount is not cool, and that deterred me from using mount. Don't be past me. This is fine. This is still wicked fast compared to anything that you would get from anything outside of JS DOM. This is fine. And also, in my opinion, mounting is better than shallowing just because it happens to execute a little bit more things. It's much better for integration tests, integration type testing, in my opinion. So I'm going to be using mount for these ones. Should be able to run a card body, fine. Should this one's a little bit harder. Should pass. What were the properties? There was one for size and variant. Size prop to card body. So if I did size is extra small, therefore this one is tricky. This one is a little bit more tricky. Man, components, card, body. It's not tricky in the sense of how to write this. It's just like fighting with enzyme, that kind of stuff again. Console, log, card, body. It's gonna yell at me because I'm using a console, might explode. Yeah, and now the function should be called with something something. Fine. Debug. What? Why? Did I get I probably got the class name wrong. Components. Components card body. There it is. Okay. Fine. You win. and it's rendered 3 things. What? Oh my god. Right. Okay, here's the other annoying thing about enzyme. I'm gonna get back on my soapbox for a moment. So, you would expect, because there's only one of these components, that you'd expect this hard body length to be 1. But the reality is that it's not. It's probably 3 or something obnoxious. 3. Why is it 3? So the reason why it's 3 is this. So if I import hard body from /body, fine. And if I render it in the traditional enzyme manner, which is const wrapper, is, you know, I'm going to even use mount from card body. So that's what's happening right now. And inside of card body, what does it do? It's rendering, literally, it's just rendering a styled component with some class names and some props. That's all it does. It doesn't do anything else. However, if we take a look at the structure inside of here, console log, console card body, no, content. Where am I even going? I'm in the wrong file. Pardon me. If I'm here, console log card body, yeah. Nope, I need to do debug. Right. Now I get some sort of printout of what it is. Why is there 3 then, if I'm just rendering one thing? So the reason why there's 3 is you can see it here. Hopefully I can print it out like this. This is how enzyme renders the HTML structure. Okay? So let's, for a moment, let us pretend that this is valid HTML. So when you do like a find like this, dot components card body, like so, if you're using traditional, say, JavaScript, const card body equals document. Again, let's pretend this is HTML and that is valid. Query selector all dot components card body. That's what's happening, essentially. And it's just testing to see if this particular class name is applied to anything that happens to be existing in the temporary bubble that it's rendered, which this happens to be. And where are our matches? Oh, we have a styled div that has this match, that's 1. We have a styled components that has this match, which is 2. And lastly, we have a div that has this match. So now we have 3. So now when you're doing this thing, which should render as one thing, you actually have 3. So a workaround for this, if you happen to be using wrappers and styled components or anything like that, is you might do something like this. You get the first one that this one happens to find. And now, if I'm just looking at this test, it looks really weird. Anyway, hard body. Working with enzyme. Again, love enzyme. Wish it was better. So now we have this first one, and I want to see if it happens to get the size prop. Maybe. So does it? It does not. Why does it not get the size prop, I wonder? Even though the props aren't getting passed in, it's instead getting a class name that happens to be is size something. Great. So the prop gets translated into a class name, which is a little bit better. I prefer that. Great, cool. Okay, so expect card body to have class. Nope, that's wrong. How do I do this again? Body. Let's see. I forgot how to do this. Find the class name has class. Expect. Right. It's an enzyme. It's an enzyme wrapper. Is size XS to be. I wonder if the tests they prefer to be true or to be truthy. Let me do a quick verify. Looks like they're using to be true, which is fine with me. And something is wrong here, and it doesn't. All right, this makes no sense. Let's go with that. Right. So it's fine now. And at least the kind of cool thing about enzymes, you can kind of do something like this. Card body. Oh, no. Card set props is. Can I do set prop? Size is LG. Maybe this works unless I have to do another find. It might not re-render. I don't know. Yeah, the set props is not a thing. All right, fine. Um, Size LG. It's not large because I have to re-render it. Oh man. Full DOM rendering. Render. Update. There we go. This still might not work. I might give up on this. Yeah. And I think the reason why it doesn't work is because this bit has cached it's holding this object in memory, which is what this class name is being tested against. However, once I update this guy, it might generate a new one, which is different than this one. Therefore, this does not apply to this one anymore. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. I'm just verifying to make sure that's correct. So in theory, if I do this, it should work. Yeah. So yeah, that's the case. It's just very verbose just to check to make sure that if I change a class name on the thing, it'll reflect on the other bit down below. All right. So making sure that works. Pass variant prop to card body. So variant is raised. That's a variant. Variant raised. Oh, you don't like that. That's fine. Did I do something wrong? Oh, that one doesn't have. That one doesn't have a variance. Oh, cool. Cool. Variant gets applied onto what then? Card UI. Onto the card UI. Oh, the card. Okay, cool. I know what to do. So variance is actually applied onto here. Describe variance. Should render borderless variant borderless. Okay, so now we have the card, which is this. Card has class is variant raised to be true. Yes? Yes, maybe. Oh, maybe we'll see. Shallow. No, it's mad at me. Why is it mad at me? Probably for enzyme reasons, because it's not finding the correct one or whatever. Oh, okay. I'm gonna mount it, and you're gonna find the first one first. And now it's going to be fine. No, it's not. Log card.debug. Okay. Why? Is variant borderless? Oh, it's because I wrote raised instead of borderless. That makes sense. No, boo-boo on my part. Alrighty. Do I still need first? Yes, yes I do. What if I change to shallow? Alright, now it's fine. Okay. It's not actually fine, in my opinion, but in the context of this test, it's fine. So in addition to writing your tests to make sure that, things pass, um, tests are very good to serve as a way of kind of documenting how your component can be written or ways to not do your component from a code integration and whatever standpoint. So here, and therefore you want your test to kind of be as simple as possible to just read. I should be able to look at this test, just this one test, and I should be able to understand what is going on. Which gets a little, and the thing that kind of breaks the rule a little bit is something here, because now I'm doing a first of a find of a card body, and that's just like, why do you need to do that? That's weird. But as we've learned, I have to do something like that because of enzyme reasons. So borderless, what else do we need? We need borderless, and we need raised. Raised, and it's happy. Cool. This actually doesn't do anything with sizes. Card UI, variance, borderless. So I think it's fine not to test the sizes. So inside of body, we actually do something. We can render the size, and also we can render if it's shady. Describe modifiers. I'm just going to call it modifiers. Okay, and here I can just copy some basic stuff. Should be able to render size modifier. Size is LG. Life's good. Has class is size LG. We replace the to be truthy to be true because that's where it seems like we're using that in other places. No, that breaks things. 1 to be 1 to be 1. Alrighty. Okay, well, so I can render the size variance. What's the other thing I need to render? I need to be able to render the shady. It is shady. Should be able to render shady modifier is shady. Component card is, I think I just added is shady. Yeah. Shady to be true. Great. So now we have basically this for headers and footers as well. Except I'm just going to replace this with card footer. Card footer. Is mad at me. Footer. Right. Okay, now for header. Basic rendering. Card footer. Header. Card footer is not it. Card header. Card footer, card header, and last bit, header. Bang. Cool. Writing tests all over the place. Great. Footer. And I don't know how this thing is set up in particular, but what I would do is, let me just double check. Coverage. So it doesn't look like there's something to check and test code coverage. So what you can do inside of Enzyme, it gives you, the Enzyme, sorry, Jest, it gives you this out of the box, is you can run it and it'll do like a code coverage kind of thing and it'll render, it'll spit out this HTML file, which is very handy, that basically shows you like red and green and percentages and stuff like that, where you have something covered in your test suite or not. And I'll show you line by line, like, oh, this is not covered, this is covered, and so on. So when I'm building something like this, typically I like to look at that to see, oh, what is it that I'm missing? What have I not tested? And I would refer to that to write my tests sometimes. But right now I'm kind of just going based on feel, based on what I can see in the component files, and then writing the test for that accordingly. So I know inside of my header and my footer, there's also a variant. And is variant borderless, variant borderless. Card footer, footer. Great. Divider. There are no variants, there are no fancy things. That's fine. We leave that alone. Shady size variant. That's taken care of for footer. Shady size variant, taken care of for header. Media I have not tested yet. And it doesn't look like it does very much. So I'm going to copy the test of divider because it's basically the same thing as media. Plop it inside of here. Card media should be able to render something. Should be able to render content. Cool. Media. It does not have a role of anything, so we'll get rid of that. Card media. Card media. Find media. V1. Nope, I don't want divider, I want media. Now it should work. Great. Basic rendering, whatever. Does not do anything fancy with context, that's fine. Great. Now we're back at our card. We're going to be testing some more integration stuff now. Let's see. Variants. Card. Describe. Pass size. Okay, so now it's like I built a thing where the card body should be able to override any modifiers that comes from the parent. What I mean by that is I built this thing into the component. So what I mean by that is, so if I'm rendering the card like so, and then now I have a card body like so, card bodies are cool, and then if I do size is LG up here, and I have several card bodies. So by doing this, these card bodies, because of context is magic, it magically is able to get that property and render it inside of here internally. However, if I'm constructing this UI and for reasons, I need the size to be something like this. And for other reasons, I need the size to be like this. I should be able to do this. Passing in props here, although it acknowledges this as, say, the default, passing in props here should override this, and now this should render instead. That is probably the most complicated bit of code inside of this card component so far, which is not complex at all. It just happens to be the most complex one. Pretty simple. So what I've done is inside of here, I have plucked out I've created a merged props kind of object where I have some default properties of what it would do by default. I would then merge in the card context. So if something from the context happens to have a size of say extra small, it would override the default props. However, if you as a user are passing in a size of large, it would then override the ones from here. And that would be the one that takes hold. We'll see. We'll see if this works. I don't think I've actually tested this inside of Storybook yet, but now that we're writing tests, we can double check. So pass modifier props to the card body. So I'm just going to do no, it doesn't do variant. What does it do? What do I pass into the card body? Size. I think size is the only one that takes hold. Variant. Variant, at least for the card body. All right, pass modifier props to card body. All right, that's fine for now. Should be able to override props from content. Card body should be able to render. Should pass modifier props from context. Should render? No. Should get. Be able to get. Should absorb. Should merge. Modifier props from context. Receive. That's a better word. English. Should be able to override props from context. Right. So now, if I do size is LG, then I expect the size to be LG. Hope this works. If it doesn't, that's bad. Okay, cool. That works. Great. So card body is done. Now I need to do header and footer, and then now that should take care of the integration. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Card header. Lots of tests, folks, but it's important, as annoying as it may be sometimes. Card header. Okay. Card header is not defined. Oh, that makes sense because I haven't imported it. Card header. From header. Everything is happy with the exception of one thing. Oh, right. Two things. So there is a another side of this, and that is, well, having tests is great. Having test coverage is great. But the more tests you write, every single test you write is another test you have to maintain. Let's put it that way. So that's the trade-off. From this alone, I've written lots and lots of these little tests. I think they're important just because they ensure that these CSS class names can't change when we may do refactors or whatever it is. That's important, and also some basic rendering tests and so on. So for that, I think the trade-off is worth it. If we do any kind of updates to these things, for example, if Enzyme release Enzyme 5, the next biggest, greatest thing, and we need to make some upgrades in the API, or if Jess makes an upgrade and we need Jess 28 or whatever it is, and we need to change some of these expect API things, then guess what? Because I wrote, say, 200 card tests, we got to update those 200 card tests. So, whoops, I whacked the microphone. I apologize. Yeah, so when you're writing your tests, it's great to have tests. Just be aware that it just becomes another thing that you have to maintain, and that the trade-off is worth it. So far, I think the trade-off is worth it. One way that I could have done this is So for card header takes in two things from the context. So what I can do is like should receive size prop from context, should receive variant prop from context, and just like do one by one every single little one of these things, which is fine. Or I can just write one test that kind of covers it. I'm going to do that right now. So if I do variant is borderless, variant borderless. Border is not the correct one. Self is borderless. Yeah, so now in one test, I can write and cover a lot of little similar use cases, and that kind of groups everything into one thing. This makes it a little bit tidier, and then there's less code to kind of maintain. So yeah, there's that. Same with this. Variant is borderless. Variant is no. Borderless, and here I will do raised. Variant raised to be true. Great, that works. So because header and footer are so darn similar, I can just copy and paste this, and now we'll have footer tests. Card footer. And card footer does not exist, so it's yelling at me. I got it. Give me some time. Calm down. Footer. Last one. Footer. Alrighty. Nope. Too many. Card footer. Footer. There we go. Great. 32 tests so far. Wow. And then header, footer, body. Those are the ones that get the props from the context. Divider, I don't think does. Media, I don't think does. Cool. Oh, I want to touch upon another thing. So, one thing that I know is people do as programmers. I'm going to just comment this out for now as a talk. So one thing people like to do as they program these things, these components or whatever it is, they code things, is TDD, test-driven development. The concept of this makes sense. I write a test because I'm guessing I want my component or whatever to behave like this, and then I will write my code to do this, and then you kind of work your way until you've eventually have built your thing. But in doing so, you've written tests for everything because it was driven by tests. So TDD is it's a very powerful tool in your arsenal. However, I personally believe that it shouldn't be the only way that you should be thinking about things. I mean, if the end goal is to have something intuitive, reliable, and robust and tested, then how you get there, I think it just depends on the individual, really, like how they think. Like for me, I did all this. I've written tests at the end. And if I did this whole thing with TDD, then I might have gotten to the same place, but the journey would have been very painful for me. That's just because when I'm initially building out these components for the card, I don't have a spec. I'm just doing this based on feel. Like, well, we don't have any card component right now. There's no design spec. There's no tech kind of requirement kind of thing. But I built many card components before. And I'm looking at the landscape of how does Bootstrap do this? How does Polaris do this? And so on. And I just built something based on that combined with what we have in WordPress components right now. In this process of just like experimentally building something, not experimentally, but just like building something based on relatively high confidence because, like I mentioned, I built it before. But then also, I was live streaming the whole thing, and people who tuned in were able to participate in just the naming of things, right? Like, oh yeah, the variation should be named this, or is shady is now. I keep hitting the mic. I'm so sorry. It should be named this. And I think TDD would have gotten in the way of that in a way. It's less organic. So how I kind of construct at least the initial kind of behavior of a component is I describe it as sketching. I'm sketching right now. I'm just like, does this work? I don't know. I'm exploring. Oh, how do we combine? How do we pass props from here to here? I know of this context thing that React provides, but how do I actually do? How do I actually do it? So that's how my mind kind of works when I'm kind of constructing and building these things. And I think if I had to do TDD, it would be like, for me, it feel like if I were to sketch something, or if I were to design or paint something, or if I were to paint a thing, before I'm allowed to paint it, I have to write an essay describing why I'm allowed to paint it or why this painting should exist. That's how it feels like for me. So this is my process of writing kind of tests afterwards, after I've like really understood and like figured out all the little nitty gritty details of this thing, and then now I'm testing it to make sure it's robust. Versus the inverse, where I'm writing the test that then and the code then follows. That being said, I do TDD sometimes. It's useful for designing um, like express server API kind of things, or lower level functions that don't necessarily execute into something that you can see. So if you're designing like a lower level array function that does fancy things, then yeah, right, TDD kind of is helpful there. Just because you have a test runner that automatically compiles a thing for you, you can see the output. Something like that works. But for something more visual that you're allowed to click and you're allowed to play with, all this kind of stuff, I prefer developing in the context of Storybook. Not only that, but JS DOM, which is the runner of your React component, doesn't support a lot of the interactions and things that you would get from an actual browser, because it's not an actual browser. It's a fake browser. So events and perhaps some other behaviors that you're able to simulate through something like Storybook or a live UI environment of some kind. You actually cannot do it inside of JS DOM. Libraries fake that stuff out just because JS DOM doesn't support it. So if you had to do a lot more nitty gritty, lower level, maybe extremely complex or custom browser things, then TDD, at least in the context of React, can only get you so far. In my opinion, you need to have a mixture of both or of everything. Anywho, let us test our divider now. Card divider. I apologize. I'm getting over a cold, so my throat's a little bit unhappy. Card divider should be able to render. Yes, should be able to render card divider. Card divider. And I apologize. The stream might not be as fun as the previous one I did, which was a little bit more, let's build UI things. Um, yeah, testing is a little bit boring, but it's important. And for anyone who's tuning in so far, I really appreciate it. And hopefully you're getting something for this. Even if this just helps one other person, I'm very happy. I'm more than happy to do this. Um, Alrighty, last one, I think. Card media. Card media is not defined. Of course not, because it's card media. Media. Alright, this one should be at the very top. These ones should follow alphabetically afterwards. Cool. So we've written a bunch of tests for our card components. And what else do I have to do? So some remaining things I have to do is I have to write a README file that kind of documents how all these components work, which is fine. I can do that. Clean up the stories. Once I had that, then I can propose my draft that has all the stories, all the tests, all the components. They're exported correctly with the README files. Great, and I can write my draft. So I think I'm going to end this live stream for today. And for today, I think half of it was just me talking about testing and enzyme and JSDOM and things like that, which are, I think, if you're doing a lot of React testing and React development, it's important to know. Um, just because I've seen and worked with developers who struggle with JSDOM and enzyme and whatever else, totally not your fault. It's just the environments, and again, not knocking anybody. Airbnb and folks who work on JSDOM, lots of admiration for that work. It's just where we're at in 2019 in JavaScript front-end development is not as robust as where we'd like it to be or we need it to be. But folks are working on it. So because of this gap, when you're doing a little bit more intricate kind of things with React or whatever the case may be, you might run into problems with enzyme, like what I did today when I was fighting between shallow rendering, mounting, and all this kind of stuff. It helps a little bit to know. It helps to know a little bit how those kind of things work underneath the hood. You don't need to go as far. You don't need to go as deep as to say build your own, but just knowing a little bit more how that works will help. Just because the gap is there, you're gonna write code that just like makes your test work every now and then, and that's gonna be sprinkled throughout your test and code base, which makes it a little bit harder to maintain and also harder to read. So knowing where the limitations are and working with them in a way that's a little bit more that simplifies how your tests read and run will be helpful. And let's see. So today I wrote very, very simple but important unit tests for all of the various little bits: card header, body, footer, divider, and media. Testing the contracts that are the class names for styling reasons, which is good. And also testing the various modifiers that they can render, which is good. And lastly, I did a test for the card component itself, its variations, and also how card header, body, footer, divider, and media, how they integrate into the card as children components, if they're able to receive props from the context, and if they're able to override. And I think that goes over all the behaviors we have for the components so far, which is good. And with that, I think I'm going to conclude the live stream. Thank you so much for everybody who's tuned in so far. If there's no one there, that's fine. Talking to myself, no one's watching right now, according to YouTube. Perfectly fine. I am fine. I don't know how long it's been like that, but I've just been talking to myself, and that's perfectly cool. Yeah. Thank again. And if you're watching this after the fact, thank you so much. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and the rest of your week. And I'll catch you next time. Catch you later. Bye. Ending the stream now. Stop streaming. Yes, please.